Take a lie detector test to prove that I never abused any of Sonia's kids or never abused Giovanni and never intentionally meant to hurt Giovanni but to help him.
However, on rare occasions, the aggressors end up protesting in favor of the defendant, as seen in the case of Judge Tracy Hunter. As a former judge, Hunter has experienced a massive fall from grace and now finds herself before Judge Patrick Dinkelacker at Hamilton County Common Pleas Court in Cincinnati. She was originally convicted of charges related to abuse of power after leaking confidential documents to her brother, allowing him to keep his job as a corrections officer. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail, but with her extensive knowledge of the legal system, Hunter managed to drag the appeals process out for an astonishing 6 years, staying free while pursuing her case through the courts. However, she has now exhausted all avenues of appeal and is in court today to determine whether the 6-month sentence will finally be imposed. Unlike most defendants, Hunter has developed a cult following, with many reporters believing her conviction to be politically motivated. Crowds of supporters have gathered both inside and outside the courtroom, and tensions are running high. Unfortunately for Hunter, her luck has run out as Judge Dinkelacker orders that she serve the entire sentence, setting in motion an extraordinary chain of events.
1, you pay the cost of these proceedings. Number 2, you are to not violate any laws. And number 3, you are to do 6 months in the Hamilton County Justice Center. Credit 1 day. Mr. or Ms. Deputy can take her away.
As the former judge stands, a collective outcry erupts from the gallery. Her supporters begin shouting in protest, voicing their discontent over the ruling. The deputies standing in the center aisle turn to the left, raising their arms in an attempt to calm the crowd. However, as they do so, a woman on the right-hand side of the gallery sees her opportunity and stands, rushing toward Hunter without interruption. As she nears her destination, the deputy closest to the podium spots her and frantically moves to stop her. The rising tension suddenly boils over. As one of the deputies moves to lead Hunter from the courtroom, she begins to struggle before going limp. By now, the gallery is in an uproar, and supporters cry out, "No justice!" The judge-turned-felon is then dragged unceremoniously from the courtroom. The woman who attempted to approach Hunter is handcuffed and led out of the courtroom by officers. The remainder of Hunter's supporters are still incensed as they exit, rallying outside the courthouse, chanting and marching in protest. Despite the chaos, Hunter ultimately serves just 3 months of her sentence before being released. While her support from the public was strong and the courtroom drama may have been out of line, the ultimate intention of her supporters was seen as morally upstanding. However, as we see in the next case, this isn't always the case. At the Marion County Judicial Center in Florida, Travis Davis has just been found guilty of first-degree murder, alongside co-defendants Brandon Banks, Kelvin Grimmage, and Kella Richardson. The 4 men are facing life in prison for shooting homeowner Courtney London during a home robbery in Ocala. Tensions are running high after the delivery of the verdict, and due to the known volatile nature of the defendants, extra deputies have been drafted in to maintain control in the courtroom. As the judge proceeds with the hearing, he asks the prosecutor if they can move forward with sentencing.
Any legal reason we shouldn't proceed with sentencing today?
Everything seems to be proceeding normally in the courtroom, but unbeknownst to everyone, things are about to take a shocking turn. Watch closely as Davis reacts just before the judge delivers the sentence. A deputy behind him attempts to cuff him, but Davis quickly yanks his hand away. Sensing the danger, the deputy immediately grabs Davis from behind, but that's when the situation escalates. A second deputy rushes toward co-defendant Grimmage to cuff him. As the deputy leans over the table, Grimmage pulls back. Davis uses his body weight to throw himself onto the table in front of him, while Grimmage joins in, grappling with the deputy and throwing punches. The chaos continues as both men are eventually dragged to the ground. Meanwhile, Davis is wrestled to the ground but manages to get back up, swinging his fists wildly as he lashes out at the deputies and even at his own defense attorney, who eventually escapes around the side of the table. With the courtroom in chaos, the deputy at the back steps in and unleashes his taser on Davis, causing him to fall to the ground. Grimmage and Banks are also tased, though Banks hasn't joined in the chaos. Luckily for Richardson, he had already been handcuffed and was rushed to the side of the courtroom when the melee erupted. The public in the gallery are up in arms, shouting and reacting to the chaos unfolding in the courtroom. A deputy orders them to leave, but many are reluctant to go, clearly upset by the violent disruption. The tension in the courtroom escalates as the deputies work to restore order and remove the unruly onlookers. The room is eventually cleared, and the deputies regain control, bringing Davis and Grimmage into the center of the courtroom. Although they ultimately face no charges related to the brawl, all 4 defendants in the Davis case are sentenced to life without parole for the murder. In such cases, the chaos in the courtroom has no bearing on the verdict or sentence. However, in the case of Carl Williams, the outcome of his trial was dramatically altered after a courtroom incident. Williams is on trial in DeKalb County for shooting and killing his girlfriend, Donana Jackson. He claims the gun went off accidentally while he was showing it to her. In the courtroom, after closing arguments, the jury exits and Williams stays behind to speak with his lawyer. The mood is calm until suddenly, a person from the public gallery rushes up to the defense table and attacks Williams. A brawl ensues, with fists flying as family members of Donana Jackson join in, swarming Williams. His defense attorney is caught in the chaos, pushed and pulled. Deputies rush in to separate the groups, arresting the individual who instigated the incident. Despite the warning, the woman grows increasingly belligerent, causing further disruption. The judge pauses the proceedings as the deputy climbs over the railings to address her directly, warning that another outburst will result in her removal. However, the judge has already had enough and swiftly orders the woman to leave the courtroom. The jury, who were in an adjoining room, hear the entire commotion, and as a result, a mistrial is granted to Williams. No retrial has been brought before the courts to date. The attack on Williams was a physical one, designed to cause as much damage as possible in a short amount of time. However, sometimes, as the next clip shows, verbal altercations can also lead to chaos in the courtroom. Lucas Lucas Kendall is appearing in Miami-Dade criminal court for a pre-trial hearing. The former bodybuilder is charged with killing Kewan Bird and attempting to kill Michael Smathers outside a Miami strip club. Kendall claims that Bird and Smathers were watching him menacingly from their vehicle, and when he went to grab something from his own car, the 2 men jumped out and threatened to kill him. Kendall then pulled out his Glock and began shooting, killing Bird and paralyzing Smathers. It was later revealed that neither man was armed, and Smathers denied that any words were spoken to Kendall. Kendall, who has been diagnosed with several mental disorders, is in court to determine his competency to stand trial. Bird's family and friends are present, including his father, Donald. The hearing begins calmly as the judge discusses Kendall's competency before moving on to the matter of where Kendall should be detained.
And then the issue is that you want him housed where?
At the same facility he's been housed.
In order to prevent him from decompensating?
Yes, Your Honor. He eventually decompensated to the point where he was sitting in a fetal position, naked, not eating, and not interacting with any human being.
While undergoing psychiatric evaluation and treatment, Kendall was moved from jail to a mental hospital. His attorney is now arguing that he should be returned to the hospital instead of being sent back to jail. Meanwhile, in the public gallery, Donald Bird, the father of Kewan Bird, is growing increasingly angry with the ongoing discussion. His emotions are building up, and it's all about to boil over as he loses control.
He need to go to prison, man. Come on, sir. Let's go. He want to play crazy. He wasn't crazy when he murdered my son, man. He wasn't crazy then, but he crazy now. All of a sudden he crazy now. You want to lay in a mental hospital? You done murdered my son, man, for nothing. When he was trying to get away from you. You was trying to get away from you, man. And you kept shooting him while his back was under the truck. You kept shooting him, man. You kept shooting him. His back was turned to you, man. He was trying to get away from you. And you murdered him, man, like you. You murdered him, man, like that.
The situation with Kevin Lyons escalates quickly after his handcuffs are placed in front of him instead of behind, a decision that turns dangerous. As he exits the holding cell, the male officer initially has control, but Lyons spins around, pulling both officers to the ground. Despite the officer's best efforts to subdue him, Lyons displays impressive strength, even kicking the female officer in the head, knocking her to the floor. He then manages to slip his handcuffs off, using them to choke the male officer, creating a perilous situation. The female officer, using a baton to try to stop him, is unsuccessful at first. After a tense struggle, the officers finally manage to subdue Lyons and pin him to the ground with the arrival of a third officer for backup. The officers, ensuring that they take no chances after the intense struggle, work together to securely restrain Lyons. Despite the chaotic situation, Lyons remains calm and even engages in casual conversation with them, discussing his history of violence as they continue to secure his hands. His demeanor suggests that he is accustomed to such interactions, showing little concern for the severity of the situation. After the officers are sure that Lyons is no longer a threat, they manage to bring him to his feet. However, Lyons refuses to back down and continues to resist. He starts making unsubstantiated claims, alleging that the officer started it by jumping on him. Despite his attempts to shift the blame, the officers remain calm and continue to control the situation, ensuring his compliance as they move forward.
You see my record?
No, I haven't.
Well, I hope you don't see it.
After being returned to his cell, Lyons continues to complain, insisting that he is the victim of the situation. However, thanks to the surveillance camera that recorded the entire incident, his claims hold no weight.
Okay. You know me. Yeah. He's crooked as That's what it is.
Okay.
That's messed up. So, I didn't do to him. He wants to grab me on wrist and start kneeing me, recording. Yeah, the camera thing won't cash in.
The male officer involved in the altercation sustains lacerations to his face and ear due to Lyons' violent actions. As a result, Lyons' simple DUI charge is escalated to 2 counts of aggravated assault against a corrections officer, leading to an 18-month sentence at Douglas State Prison. In some cases, however, the frustration and anger extend beyond the convict and toward the victims' families. One example of this is David Chavez, where his loved one's anger at his incarceration leads to outbursts directed at the victim's family. And there you have it, some of the most intense and chaotic moments from courtrooms where tempers flared and situations spiraled out of control. These events serve as a reminder of the high emotions that often accompany legal battles and the lengths some will go to when pushed to their limits. Whether it's a violent outburst or an emotional breakdown, these incidents highlight just how unpredictable courtrooms can be. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more stories from the heart of the justice system.
Mr. Eggert is retained on the 2 revocations.
Despite the warning, the woman grows increasingly belligerent, causing further disruption. The judge pauses the proceedings as the deputy climbs over the railings to address her directly, warning that another outburst will result in her removal. However, the judge has already had enough and swiftly orders the woman to leave the courtroom.
Ma'am, you're gonna have to leave the courtroom.
We all family.
Okay, y'all got to not talk. Okay. No talking in the courtroom. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Peace seems to be restored to the courtroom, and the remainder of the hearing proceeds without incident. However, as Wade is being let out at the end, chaos erupts, disrupting the proceedings entirely. The defendant strides toward the door, flanked by a deputy, but as he passes the gallery, the victim's family members erupt in anger, rising from their seats in a storm of profanity. Chaos ensues as the second deputy rushes toward the gallery, attempting to contain the situation. As tensions escalate, the deputy scales the gate to hold back the enraged crowd swarming around Wade. The camera view shifts to Judge Haney, and while the chaos in the courtroom is no longer visible, her expression speaks volumes. Off camera, Wade is seen running toward the judge's bench, pursued by an enraged gallery member. As Wade escapes through a door to the side of the bench, his pursuer leaps onto the bench and jumps past Judge Haney. Remarkably, despite the pandemonium, Judge Haney remains composed, keeping her seat throughout the ordeal. Eventually, after repeated cries for assistance, one of the deputies takes notice of the situation. The judge, maintaining her composure, motions toward the door to indicate that Wade has fled the courtroom.
He's wrong. He's wrong, bro. Help! 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 He's wrong.
Help! You stay back.
He's wrong.
I know.
The chaos continues to echo from the hallway, where the commotion reaches its peak. Amid the uproar, Wade is once again apprehended by law enforcement.
He's wrong.
As a result of the incident, 4 men were arrested and charged with disorderly conduct and obstructing governmental operations. In highly emotional cases like this, herd mentality often takes over, fueling chaotic outbursts. However, more often than not, courtroom disruptions are instigated by a single lone wolf, such as Jason Wilson. Jason Wilson is in court to deliver a victim impact statement following the murder of his sister, Misty, after her husband, Tristan Laro, pleaded guilty to the crime. Misty's body was discovered on the bathroom floor of the couple's apartment, having been shot 5 times in the head with a handgun. As Wilson walks through the gate toward the podium, he fixes Laro with a long, hard stare. Wilson begins his statement before Judge G. Michael Westfall, describing the profound impact his sister's death has had on his life. Overcome with emotion, his voice falters as he speaks. Meanwhile, Laro remains unfazed, rocking nonchalantly in his chair. Unable to contain his grief and frustration, Wilson turns directly to Laro, demanding to know why he committed the heinous act, and what happens next is truly unbelievable. As deputies rush to push Wilson back, Laro suddenly moves as though he's preparing to retaliate. A deputy swiftly intervenes, jumping in from behind, wrapping his arms around Laro, and pulling him backwards to the ground. On the other side of the table, Wilson is met with the same rough treatment as deputies fight to restrain both men. On the ground, it becomes clear that Wilson is resisting more forcefully, while Laro lies there, seemingly passive. Let's watch again how quickly the entire incident unfolds. Wilson is eventually subdued and handcuffed. As deputies pull him back to his feet, he apologizes profusely for his outburst. He is then led from the courtroom. Despite Iron County Attorney Scott Garrett stating plans to charge Wilson with disorderly conduct, no charges are filed in the end. Tristan Laro is sentenced to 15 years to life for the murder of Misty. Lashing out at the defendant in retaliation for the murder of a loved one is one of the most common causes of physical altercations in the courtroom.